and Hogwarts. King's Cross is an attractive prospect for workers too. Just ask the local talent. The area is brimming with brains. Google's new home will be within strolling distance of the British Museum, the Francis Crick and the Turing Institutes, prestigious University College London, University College Hospital, the Wellcome Trust and any number of biotech and AI startups. Lately, this ultra-commutable egghead enclave has stolen the crown from London's other wannabe tech hub, a grimy junction above Old Street Underground cynically nicknamed Silicon Roundabout. Anyway, enter Google, whose grand new edifice is said to have cost somewhere in the region of £1 billion. It's 11 stories high and stretches 330 metres along the King's Cross railway tracks. That's longer than the London's tallest building. The Shard is high, by the way. Many Londoners say this development makes a nice change from all those priapic skyscrapers. The new HQ was designed in a collaboration between Copenhagen's starchitect Bjarke Ingels and King's Cross-based Heatherwick Studios. Heatherwick, who as it happens just completed a lavish £100 million refit of nearby Coldrops Yard shopping centre, is no stranger to Cockney icons. Heatherwick designed the flaming cauldron centrepiece for London's 2012 Olympic Games and the city's curvaceous new-look Routemaster buses. Google's UK HQ, which founder Larry Page commissioned after dismissing another top architect's plans as boring, really is a bit special. There's a large multi-lane upper-story swimming pool, cutting-edge sports facilities, a gym, 4 cafes and a multi-use games area. There's a 210-seat auditorium for product announcements and lectures. The whole structure sits atop a so-called plinth of retail and dining spots intended to, in Heatherwick's words, create variety and fascination at a human scale. On the rooftop, behold a 300-metre landscape garden divided into zones including a pause area for quiet contemplation. There's shady wooded spots dappled with pastel wildflowers, lily-covered fish ponds, rustic beehives, and a 200-metre running track commanding peerless panoramic views over London. Inside, a dramatic staircase floats diagonally through what Bjarke Ingels describes as a single confident volume akin to King's Cross Station's magnificent multi-arched concourse. All internal routes are easy and flowing and connected in order to inspire opportunities for chance encounters and foster all-important creativity. Fundamentally, of course, it's an office block, so imagine hundreds of people staring at screens and zoning out in meetings. Hey, at least they get nap pods. The very fabric of the building was chosen in line with Google's so-called Healthy Materials Programme. This initiative traces its origins back to the early days of Google, when a fretful Larry Page would prowl the office with a handheld particle counter measuring air quality and particulates emanating from the walls and floors. Presently, Google runs a handful of offices across London. Famously, its Victoria outpost has beach huts and Dodgem cars, while staff at Google's Covent Garden branch enjoy access to an allotment. This new building, alongside 2 other nearby King's Cross sites being looked at by Google, will unify its UK team on one 7,000-person campus. The centrepiece will be this, the only wholly Google designed and built building outside the US. But hang on a minute, you're probably thinking, don't we all work from home now? At the time of writing, almost all of Google's 118,000 global employees are working in their jammies. CEO Sundar Pichai has signalled he intends this policy to stand until the end of June 2021 at any rate. Because while it's clear the nature of work has probably changed forever, Pichai still has faith in the unique alchemy of in-person collaboration. We firmly believe that being together, having that sense of community is super important for whenever you need to solve hard problems, he told Time magazine. So we don't think the future is 100% remote. We value our offices, we value the culture. Certainly, King's Cross's lunchtime restaurant and bar scene will rejoice when Google's shiny new HQ fills up with well-remunerated young go-getters potentially as soon as next year. Right now, it's still being built. Get a load of those Android logos running up its reinforced concrete core. But ultimately, Google's huge investment in London is a tonic for those Londoners who worry that, since the pandemic, their city has lost its mojo. Well, if anyone can help them find it, what do you think? Are these vast office hulks nothing but dinosaurs from a bygone corporate era? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more hot desking tech content.
Emmanuel, can you hear me?
Okay.
Top of the morning to you all connecting across the nation. I believe it's been a wonderful week and a productive one indeed. We are glad to welcome you all to the fourth session of the Masterclass activities of the Climate Actors Accelerator Programme. And on behalf of the network, we want to say happy Ramadan to all our Muslim brethren. And this morning, we are moving straight to the fourth session, which is going to be led by an industry expert, and the session is on sustainable construction, focusing on buildings and roads. This morning, we are blessed to have Dr. Niara, who is the founder and director of Environance. She is an environmental expert who taught and practiced architecture and urban design for over 15 years in a number of institutions and consultancy, both in Cairo and in Dubai. She holds a PhD from the AA School of Architecture in London and MSc in Sustainable Designs of the Built Environment. Dr. Niara's publication focuses on urban environmental assessment, thermal comfort to improve walkability, and passive cooling for the outdoor environment. This morning, we are so glad to receive you in the masterclass session of the Climate Actors Accelerator Programme. Good morning, Dr. Niara.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Good morning.
All right. Just give me a few minutes.
Okay.
Now, can you hear me as well?
All right, we can hear you clearly now, Ma, and we appreciate you can share your screen to start the presentation on the sustainable construction.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me, Emmanuel? طيب.
Okay, Doctor, I don't know if it's okay for you. You can start the session right now, Ma, while we have the, okay. You are a co-host, and I believe we can share your screen, Ma. You can start the session.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Just a kind of vibration, that's a feedback which we have.
I am having a problem logging in from the same device that I will be able to share my screen.
Okay.
So I'm trying to solve the technical problem.
All right, that's fine. That's fine now. So why she thought that we just quickly address one or two things And I want to sincerely apologize for some reasons that you don't have some of the presentation slides on the learning resources, but that I can assure you that you are going to have everything on the learning resources before the end of the week. And it's very important for us to go through these learning resources, and also the videos of each masterclass sessions are still on the YouTube. They're on the YouTube platforms forever for us to keep learning and to unlearn, learn and relearn over and over. And thirdly, I would also like to speak on the basic activities which we have via the course. Okay. Doctor, are you able to share the screen now?
I am not, unfortunately. I'm trying to solve it. I think I need a few more minutes.
All right, that's fine. So basically, for this month, I know that we are still going to treat some questions, and that has to do with the phase 2 and the phase 3 of the Climate Actors Accelerator Programme. But for this month, basically, what we have been focused on is the advanced learning on various aspects of climate and environment, which we are currently on the 4th week now. And as we speak, we are on the 4th section, and we've had like, I think that this should be the 5th one, and we are still going to have like 3 more masterclass sessions. And it's going to, like, I had the feedbacks for last week was so amazing. Definitely, we believe that the other sessions are still going to be more amazing as well. And most importantly, it's also paramount for us to share the learnings, things we get to learn from this masterclass session. You can share it on your LinkedIn, you can share it on your status, you can share it, you can tweet those learnings and just tag CAAP 2023. Those are the major, that's another way which you can advance climate education and advocacy across all boards. And please, let's not forget that the assessment and knowledge evaluation is going to hold next week, Friday. It's going to be in the evening, just because we feel it's very important for us to have the assessments when each and every one we have opportunity to participate in it. So it's very important for us to take note of all the timeline we have for the year. I mean, for this course, the timeline, the program guide has been shared with us. But should you have any further question or area of concern, please reach out to your state representative. I believe all states are adequately represented as we speak. It's very important for each and every state to have a representative who is going to be communicating with the program managers should you have any area of concern or you have any urgent request. So your state representative will be your spokesman and also be the person giving you feedback consecutively at each point. And we just mentioned this, that there is an information session for all state representatives tomorrow evening, which is going to provide more information about what is expected from each and every one. And also, we hope to have your questions and we hope to have your major concern, which you want us to attend to. All right, right about now, we just like to hand it over back to Dr. Nier. I don't know if
thank you very much, Emmanuel. It seems that I have a connection problem with my computer. I'm not able to have any audio. I'm logging in from my phone, actually, where I don't have anything to share from there. So I expect that you will be showing other presentations as well during this hour. Is there other presentations on the green and blue economy topic or not?
If you don't mind, you can share us the presentation slide. The program manager will take it up to share why you present now.
I expect that I will facilitate a session on other presentations on the green and blue economy.
No, it's basically focused. This session, this hour is basically focused on sustainable construction, which you had to lead or through.
I did not receive that actually, but tell me about it. It's about the sustainable construction, right?
Yes, yes.
Let me try and solve that. I think it seems that the topic I received was a little bit different than what you are discussing now.
Oh, please, sorry, just a minute, ma. I believe it's very important. I confirm that. Sorry, uh, just in a minute. But do you have your presentation slide which you can share with us so that the program manager can share the screen from our end while you?
Well, I can find something so that others who are logged in the session, I can find something about sustainable construction to present or discuss, but I don't think this was the focus of the session. So I was expecting to see other presentations in blue and green
Yes, yes,
economy to
yes,
facilitate,
yes,
so
yes.
that
All
I
right.
will be facilitating this session. So I did not have something to present myself on that particular one. But my focus and expertise is on sustainable construction.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
tell me what is the theme so that I can kind
Sorry,
of sort out.
Dr. Mira, apologies. I just confirm now that you are handling the green and blue economy session, which is what you prepared for, right?
This is not my focus of expertise. What I have received is that I will be facilitating other presentations that are discussing the green and blue economy, actually.
Yes, yes. Please, you can move on with that, ma'am.
So do we have other speakers on board who will be discussing this particular session?
No, 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 we don't have any other speaker. The session is mainly focused and is mostly dedicated to you for the next 40 minutes.
Yeah,
While
but my area of expertise or my focus, well, thank you for the very interesting introduction you gave about me. I'm an architect and I'm a professor in the field of sustainable architecture and environmental design. I'm the founder of Environas, which is a sustainable environmental consultancy based in Egypt, aiming to develop environmental design solutions for different climatic conditions worldwide. So my focus and my expertise is on the part for sustainable construction, I would say. It's very interesting when we deal with sustainability, that economy or the economical part or the economical pillar of sustainability is very important, as well as the environmental and social dimension. Other cultural aspects have arose recently, which we are integrating into the action for sustainability. But for me to be able to focus on the economical part, I wouldn't say that it is the expertise or the focus that we highlight on in the projects or the presentations that I usually deliver. In my online presentations or sessions, I usually rather focus on the environmental part. So let me know if there are other things you can proceed with, or you want to give me a few minutes to perhaps convey a short masterclass about this part. Let me know so that I wouldn't be taking any other topics that will be discussed later on during the day.
yeah, that's fine, man. You can proceed with that, man.
Okay. So can I send that to,
Yes,
can I send the presentation to the email, right?
yes, you can, man. You can, man.
Okay, so that you can share that.
All right. Yes, absolutely. Dear participants, please, we would like to crave your indulgence to just be patient in a few minutes while we receive the presentation slides for us to share. And the session is going to commence shortly again. We are still on the call, and we also like to prepare for questions and answer. Dr. Niara is here to attend to each and every of it. Just in less than 3 minutes, we'll be back to start the session fully. All right, thank you, everyone.
This long and low Leviathan is Google's glossy new London headquarters. So lengthy it's been dubbed the land scraper by locals. Over 1 million square feet of floor space, it accommodates basketball courts, a theatre, massage parlours and nap pods shared between some 4,500 staff. So what's up with that unusual design? How's the neighbourhood? And aren't office blocks a bit 2019? Join us now for a grand tour around Google's new UK headquarters. The North London district of King's Cross, where Google's new GAF is going, has something of a checkered past. It was first a site of great commercial importance when the newfangled steam railways and London's Regent's Canal opened in the 19th century. Alas, from about 1980 onwards, King's Cross sadly descended into vice and squalor as old-school industry fled the city. However, since 2000, developers have been gussying up the neighbourhood through a monumental multi-decade investment programme. And it's easy to see why big employers like Google and its soon-to-be neighbour Facebook are moving in. King's Cross is incredibly well served for transport links. You can go anywhere in London by tube in a matter of minutes. Next door you can jump on a train to Paris, not to mention the regular fast rail services to Oxford, Cambridge and Hogwarts. King's Cross is an attractive prospect for workers too. Just ask the local talent. The area is brimming with brains. Google's new home will be within strolling distance of the British Museum, the Francis Crick and the Turing Institutes, prestigious University College London, University College Hospital, the Wellcome Trust and any number of biotech and AI startups. Lately, this ultra-commutable egghead enclave has stolen the crown from London's other wannabe tech hub, a grimy junction above Old Street Underground cynically nicknamed Silicon Roundabout. Anyway, enter Google, whose grand new edifice is said to have cost somewhere in the region of £1 billion. It's 11 stories high and stretches 330 metres along the King's Cross railway tracks. That's longer than the London's tallest building. The Shard is high, by the way. Many Londoners say this development makes a nice change from all those priapic skyscrapers. The new HQ was designed in a collaboration between Copenhagen's starchitect Bjarke Ingels and King's Cross-based Heatherwick Studios. Heatherwick, who as it happens just completed a lavish £100 million refit of nearby Coal Drops Yard shopping centre, is no stranger to Cockney icons. Heatherwick designed the flaming cauldron centrepiece for London's 2012 Olympic Games and the city's curvaceous new-look Routemaster buses. Google's UK HQ, which founder Larry Page commissioned after dismissing another top architect's plans as boring, really is a bit special. There's a large multi-lane upper-storey swimming pool, cutting-edge sports facilities, a gym, 4 cafes and a multi-use games area. There's a 210-seat auditorium for product announcements and lectures. The whole structure sits atop a so-called plinth of retail and dining spots intended to, in Heatherwick's words, create variety and fascination at a human scale. On the rooftop, behold a 300-metre landscape garden divided into zones including a pause area for quiet contemplation. There's shady wooded spots dappled with pastel wildflowers, lily-covered fish ponds, rustic beehives, and a 200-metre running track commanding peerless panoramic views over London. Inside, a dramatic staircase floats diagonally through what Bjarke Ingels describes as a single confident volume akin to King's Cross Station's magnificent multi-arched concourse. All internal routes are easy and flowing and connected in order to inspire opportunities for chance encounters and foster all-important creativity. Fundamentally, of course, it's an office block, so imagine hundreds of people staring at screens and zoning out in meetings. Hey, at least they get nap pods. The very fabric of the building was chosen in line with Google's so-called Healthy Materials Programme. This initiative traces its origins back to the early days of Google, when a fretful Larry Page would prowl the office with a handheld particle counter measuring air quality and particulates emanating from the walls and floors. Presently, Google runs a handful of offices across London. Famously, its Victoria outpost has beach huts and Dodgem cars, while staff at Google's Covent Garden branch enjoy access to an allotment. This new building, alongside 2 other nearby King's Cross sites being looked at by Google, will unify its UK team on one 7,000-person campus. The centerpiece will be this, the only wholly Google designed and built building outside the US. But hang on a minute, you're probably thinking, don't we all work from home now? At the time of writing, almost all of Google's 118,000 global employees are working in their jammies. CEO Sundar Pichai has signaled he intends this policy to stand until the end of June 2021 at any rate. Because while it's clear the nature of work has probably changed forever, Pichai still has faith in the unique alchemy of in-person collaboration. We firmly believe that being together, having that sense of community is super important for whenever you need to solve hard problems, he told Time magazine. So we don't think the future is 100% remote. We value our offices, we value the culture.
Hello.
Okay, Doctor, you can share your screen now. You have access to that.
I'm accessing from two. Yes, now it's working. Okay.
All right.
Do you still hear the echo?
No. It's perfect now.
So it's clear now, right? You can see.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly.
Enable. Okay. Okay, so apologies for the inconvenience. It seems that there's a few misunderstandings that happened along the way. Unfortunately, I will just shift the topic a little bit to the topic of design and research, the role of environmental design and how we tie it to the aspect of sustainability. Today, I will focus basically on what we do at the consultancy or the environmental consultancy, trying to bridge the part between academia and practice, let's say. So the key pillars, strategies that we focus on when we have research projects and actual projects are the teams, the research, and the project itself. So basically what happens in the market is that the role and the time, the budget allocation that is being given for actual projects for the research within the actual project is very limited. Usually projects have a very tight time schedule and clear deliverables where time and resources given for research is very limited. So the focus that we try to integrate within each and every project that we take or I get involved in is to try to manage financially and as well as technically the role of research and how much we can tailor solutions for each and every project that we deliver. When I talk about projects, I introduced at the beginning that these projects are basically design services that provide design solutions in the building industry and construction sector in order to design buildings and spaces and outdoor spaces that will be able to reduce the energy consumption, improve the user's comfort, and accordingly adverse the effects of climate change on a bigger scale. So I will always try to reflect on the small and big picture between design and research as we go. When we talk about the team, depending on the projects and the research, you would find that this is very variable. So there is a big diversity of expertise that is needed. And I always encourage younger practitioners to always dig deeper into the part where it has got to do with research based on the sector that they are located in. To try to grasp as much knowledge in diverse tracks and sectors as much as possible in order to fit. Sometimes in the practical field, you need to fit as much as possible based on the diverse, let's say, try to tackle the problem and your expertise, build your expertise where you can be able to fill a gap in diverse gaps that are needed there. So I would say for the team that equipping yourself with diverse tools and skills, trying to get as much training as possible, and green certifications is very important. And of course, proceed with professional publications for the research that you conduct and the trainings that you conduct, because that will always enable you to uplift your quality of work that you present, even if you will not use it directly, but sometimes it reflects indirectly on the delivery of services. The research in itself is very interesting because there are many gaps when we look at the market for the construction industry and the building industry. It's very important that we try to identify what is needed. We try to balance as much as possible, I would say, between getting market-driven, because sometimes clients or normal users would request certain projects that do not necessarily, I would say, necessitate on the researchers or the design labs that they would be able to figure out the gaps that they want to fill in and provide with each and every project. So in order to avoid getting market-driven or commercial-driven, or being enthusiastic about delivering the service, even if it's not very environmentally sound and user-friendly as well. So I would say focus on the gaps is very important, that we are able to deliver more climate-friendly solutions. Design support is very important, because these problems that we try to look at, I will discuss on one of the examples shortly. So these the design support, whenever we have a problem and then we come up with a set of solutions, scratch our heads, we just need to again go back and try to find an actual design solution. So I would say that design support is very important because it helps a lot in the implementation, in driving action, climate action. So sometimes we're able to be very critical about some of the designs, some of the problems out there, but yet not able to provide a proper design alterations for that. SWOT, we always conduct, of course, the SWOT, the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats within each and every research topic. And then moving into the projects is actually where we provide this design and assessment services, which is part of the services that are being conducted by environmental consultancies and green consultancies in the building industry. So by the end of the time, again, this research part where you're trying to fill the gaps, trying to build on the team's skills, the green certifications, if they are not delivered as a design proposal or a design solution, with all the assessment services, then this is undermined. I would go to where we believe that, or where I believe that the environmental design, environmental assessment, and environmental research go hand in hand. So we have, or I developed something called the metrics, an in-house metrics. So it's basically with each and every project, you try to look and try to balance the environmental impact and the user impact. So what happens on a bigger scale is that with each and every problem, like heat rise in cities. So what would happen is that in order to address this problem or try to find the design solution for it, it's either we will increase the electrical consumption through mechanical cooling, let's say, or we would request a better user behavior. So we would require users, for example, to take more frequent showers, go to a coastal area and try to, spend this time that with the certain heat rise phenomena for certain days or certain hours in another area. So you would find that these solutions, the more you're trying to provide comfort for the user, the more you're harming the environment. So this balance is very much needed. So in well-equipped buildings or green buildings, let's say, you would find that these problems are already being taken into considerations. So mechanical cooling is there for this particular problem, let's say. So it would just ensure that no heat risk, no one is interrupted during a workflow during the day, for example, in an extreme heat rise event or occasion. And accordingly, we would trying to solve that in order to benefit the user impact, we will just have to harm the environment. So then the environmental impact is not balanced in the same way. And if we try to benefit the environment, so I always refer to the conventional ways and methods. I think that is there in many different cultures. Here in Egypt, we have this a lot. In older districts where you can find conventional buildings, how they were built, different spaces with air ventilation and solar protection, where people change their location between one place to another, and no mechanical cooling is allowed. So no artificial measures, no active, let's say, interventions in the building. It's all based on passive measures. And in order to provide that, you would realize that, well, this user that we discussed in the first example, who was just sitting on the chair or sitting in an office, okay, if there is a heat rise condition or occasion, would just turn on the air condition. Sorry, if there is a heat rise occasion, he would just turn on the air condition. That is totally different in terms of comfort we provide for this type of user versus a type of user in a conventional or a traditional environment where no mechanical interventions are needed. Therefore, sometimes the approach for going passive or going environmental or trying to highlight and support this particular track very much brings us to the part that sustainable design is trying to compromise luxury. I wouldn't say that I'm trying to support the idea of luxury, but I try to highlight that sustainable design or environmental design do not compromise luxury or do not compromise comfort.
Hello, Doctor.
Yes.
Hello. We observed that your presentation slide is still on the front page. I don't know if...
Are you? Oh no. I'm moving. No.
Hopefully you have to stop sharing and reshare again.
Okay. Stop sharing and reshare again. It seems that there is a few of inconveniences. Okay, stop share. Share. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Oh, I've been going through a few slides. Okay. So back to the environmental impact and the user impact part, where we're trying to balance, again, both metrics to be able to deliver optimum design solutions. And to be able to do that, you would realize that it's very important to conduct a lot of research, because you wouldn't be able to reduce the energy consumption and provide optimum thermal comfort conditions for the users unless you conduct a lot of research, a lot of assessments. And that is what I highlight today. So that is being undermined a lot in actual projects, undermined in terms of time, undermined in terms of resources, undermined in terms of even financial planning, let's say. I will try to link that to the blue and green economy at the end of the presentation, by the end of the time. Okay, so going back to the research and design development. So looking into each and every sector, okay, it's in the environmental design, we deal with different scales. It's the urban design, that's on a massive scale, on a bigger scale. And then we go into the architecture, which is a building scale. And then we go into the interior, which is on a direct relation with the user. Landscape is very important, but it's not there in all contexts unless you're dealing with an urban environment. And then comes the role of the facade, which is the building skin, which is the elevation of the building, because that is considered very important when you are trying to design the architecture of the building and the interior as well. How is that conducted? Basically, is through a set of analysis and assessments. So unless you run these assessments on your buildings, you will not be able to understand what are the environmental factors that are causing any threats, what are the environmental factors that are causing threats, what are the solutions that are needed, which are the parameters to change, and so on. The next part is the user comfort analysis, again, the post-occupancy evaluation of buildings. Both of them are very much related because they are, I would say it helps us understand how is the perception of the user to these spaces taking place by the end of the time. We design buildings. I think we all go in buildings, urban spaces on our daily lives. And sometimes we feel a lot of discomfort. Sometimes it's very comfortable. Sometimes you feel attached to certain spaces, even if it has got nothing to do with the environmental part. So I would say that this particular element is called the user's perception. We highlight a lot on the user's perception because sometimes in research, even in very critical research, we try to improve very minimal and very small parts to elevate the user's comfort. And on a bigger norm, this is sometimes not very necessary. So we're just, causing a lot, burdening the environmental impact more rather than improving the user's impact. I will go to the building energy performance. It's I would say, the most holistic approach for us to be able to look into the different parameters of affecting the buildings in terms of heating, cooling, electrical consumption, as well as lighting, the air quality of the spaces, the acoustic, which is the sound performance of these spaces. So we look into all these aspects together in order to deliver for the user a very comfortable spaces without being able to, yet being able to reduce the environmental impact. The environmental impact assessments are a set of studies that are slightly different. What do they do? The environmental impact assessments, they look into the environmental impact from a different dimension. So in terms of emission, let's say. So it's a very interesting part. It's a conversion, let's say, into this discomfort that is being caused due to a heat risk, due to a heat rise phenomena, which causes a discomfort for the users. And then according to that, excess mechanical conditioning will be used. So the demand for mechanical conditioning will happen. And then this mechanical conditioning will impact the environment with a certain amount of emissions. So again, it's tied to, and then we bring it back to the phenomena of heat risk, because that is only causing this particular pressure to just increase. So when you look at this particular cycle for the example that I gave, the only way to try to, whether it's the adaptation measures or the mitigation measures for climate change that we are trying to look into, both of them involves the users of the environments very much, because it drives us to the other phenomena, which is the human-induced climate change. I would say that, okay, as people are part of the environment, they are being affected, but then they react back to the environment, and this reaction is sometimes causing these problems, or usually are causing these problems to exaggerate again. So the environmental impact assessment is looking to this particular micro applications on a bigger scale, I would say. So it looks into what happens on the environment level. And then we try to, or I try to derive from that or highlight very important on the effect of climate change as discussed, the idea of the notion of walkability and how much it's important in cities, and the environmental research methodologies. I will give a small example on each and every one. The climate change, I think it's with the emissions. If you look into the walkability, how we link these particular tracks together. So basically, if we walk more in cities, depend less on cars, we use active mobile solution, modes, like bicycles, for example. So these would reduce the emissions, and accordingly, we could convert that with the carbon footprint of such action on the climate change adaptive measures. The environmental research methodologies are basically the methods that are being used in order to be able to measure that on a smaller scale. Whether it's to measure the pollutants in an environment, whether to measure heat rise and humidity levels, or air quality measures inside buildings, and so on. Okay, let me play this video. Oh. Okay. I'm not sure. Okay. Okay. So this is a video. This video discusses, let me check if. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just let me skip the video and then I will get back to it. Do I have more time? How much can I elaborate more? Because I know we lost a lot of time at the beginning.
15 minutes, Doctor, while we attend to questions and answers.
Okay. So this is an example for environmental measurements of a residential building in Cairo. So we conducted environmental measurements in a few spaces for air.
Again, I think you stopped sharing it.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So these are examples basically for, I will start highlighting the examples.
You still don't have it in a full screen. I think you might have to stop sharing and reshare again.
Yeah, I will.
All right. Sorry for the apologies for the inconvenience.
Yeah, apologies from my end as well. No, it does not work.
It's not working. We can, maybe you have to activate the full screen before you start sharing.
Okay. That could be a good idea. No, that could not be
Dear
possible.
participants, you can just use the comment section to drop your questions, and we'll take it up from there. Program managers will take it up from there. All right, perfect now. Thank you very much.
Okay, so in this particular track for research, the focus is basically on buildings. It's the role of transitional spaces in climate proofing. And transitional spaces are terraces, front yards, are all the spaces that create a spatial buffer with the external, between the outdoor and the indoor environment. So few environmental monitoring was conducted. I wouldn't want to highlight a lot on that. So I would just, okay, let me now move towards the net zero energy, because this was the other example I was going to highlight on today, which is the net zero approach in building. The net zero approach in building is, let's say, it's optimum solutions for green buildings. So instead of putting a benchmark where you have to reduce the emissions, improve the environmental performance of these buildings while elevating the user's comfort, well, this benchmark is being raised higher and higher, where you want to achieve basically a balance between all the spendings in energy and all the production in energy. So you want to produce as much as you are able to consume. And I think this is the whole idea of replenishing the resources of the climate change, trying to adverse the climate change effect, where we want to replenish the resources that we are discussing in many of the other sessions I'm sure you attended. The idea of the net zero for each and every building comes from that, is that you're trying to take from the environment and not give back in a clean way. So even through the energy that is being used in the building or in different spaces, that would necessitate basically solar panels, for example, wind power, a hydro. It could be from any other resources, but they have to be clean resources of energy. And then you have to ensure as well, on the other hand, that you are reducing your consumption within these buildings as well. So this example brings us to the idea of studying specific buildings and trying to come up with the best practices that are located within a certain environment. And these best practices are based on numerical measurements. And then we convert that we try to generalize that into lessons learned so that we can be able to apply those ones into the other coming projects and try to provide design solutions. When I say that, of course, we do not remove the role of technology. When I say technology, it's very broad, but of course, the role of mobile devices, applications, data-driven from all of those resources is very important, because they help convey how much the users are using, how the users are using basically these environments, how comfortable are they with these environments as well. And we could also use them to measure the environmental parameters that are taking place. And having said that, we could just even go into the idea of smart buildings. Smart buildings where automated systems are being tied between each and every part. So basically, based on the user's comfort, I would say that the cooling, the lighting, anything that requires energy would be automated in order to be efficient as possible, so that we will be able to reduce the energy consumption from buildings. This in itself looks into, this was a research about climate change, and it looks into the different parameters. So we look into the phenomena, the seasonal variation that's taking place in different cities, and how these seasonal variations are being changed over time. So I will again relate it to the example that I was discussing now. So when we are designing a certain building, and then we want to convey that in or deliver the performance of that building by 2050, so we have to take into consideration what effects will be taking place during that year. So basically, it will not be like today, because if today the climate change is affecting us by this much compared to 20 years back, so we would expect that the targets that we are trying to meet in 15 or 20 years in time would require a different strategy. So we take that into consideration in terms of the analysis, and it's very important to not only, I would say, for younger people who are starting their career, not only focus on solving the problem and then we are trying to deal with that. Let's try to find a solution for what's happening now, but perhaps take another leap and try to look at these effects and try to provide these solutions that we're trying to provide today in buildings, for example, in terms of design solutions, or in another sector, if you are dealing with another sector, that would fit 15 years from now or 20 years from now. Having said that, I looked into, I don't want to elaborate on that. Yes, this is a very interesting diagram we always refer to, and it's the relation between the microclimate, the pedestrian's thermal comfort, and the outdoor spaces. So we're always dealing with people inside spaces that are affected by the climate or the microclimatic conditions. So this particular relation and the direction of this relation is very obvious. So the climate is affecting buildings and affecting cities, and the climate is affecting people as well. And buildings are affecting people as well. So the intention that I consistently try to look into is how the pedestrians or how people, user-friendly environments would be able to convey back, affect the climate and affect the built environment. So when we look at that, we try to, we want to convey our message that we're not only the needs and requirements for the users are being taken into consideration when we design cities, which are sometimes ignored, or when we design buildings, and then we have these cities and buildings that we find and then we live at, and then it's affecting us sometimes negatively, but sometimes we're not able to affect that back. We're just harming more the environment. It's either by trying to provide alternative solutions or demolishing or extended energy demands and so on. So it's very important to look into bridging this particular gap. And I think the idea of and I think using the digital tools to be able to drive the regenerative spaces is very important. To, let's say, replenish all of these harms and effects that have been caused over the past decades. I think we can... Okay, so I think the audio is not working, the sound for the video. So I will just go through it. So this video basically discusses the idea or the role of technology, which is taking place vastly now in cities and buildings as well. The idea of smart buildings is a small scale of it, so where everything is automated. On a bigger scale, it's the IoT or the big data part in cities and how each and every building is being linked together. Infrastructure, water consumption, energy demand, with many other things. So all of these layers are being could not only be used to convey what's happening on real ground, but we could also be providing solutions from these data based on actual research that we conduct. So yes, they do deliver a message, but I think the innovations in digital twinning that are taking place currently in few countries worldwide. So how we are able to, we look into that on a very small scale. So how can we mimic, let's say, imitate what's happening in this particular city in a digital world or in a virtual world? And when we mimic this particular condition based on the existing scenario, we can then derive different scenarios, and these different scenarios could have the interventions of adversing climate change or even trying to find other solutions. And these solutions would be tailored for each and every specific context. So I wouldn't say that we are trying to find solutions for these problems, global problems that we look into, for example, in different cities that we are currently at. Yet at the same time, these variety of solutions fits different developing and developed countries, I would say. Is my time over? I cannot hear you.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much, Ma. Definitely, we have some questions we like to treat before the end of your session. And though they've already shared some of those questions in the comment section here, and also our participants that are having questions, you can ask, use the comment section on YouTube to drop your questions.
Okay, let me, okay. Go ahead, please.
All right, you can just round up. We appreciate you round up the facilitation, ma'am, before we start the questions and answers.
Okay, so basically, I think this is the last one. Okay, so basically, this is touching up on the last video that we have seen. It's very important when we discuss this IoT and digital twinning scenarios. We look into that, not that we conduct them. I do not conduct them myself. However, you look into the behavior of people. I go back to the idea of human-induced climate change. So if the behavioral patterns of people in streets and in buildings and in how they deal with reacting to the environmental catastrophes, the environmental changes that are taking place, this would in itself give a lot of influence on people who are able to deal with these solutions and probably try to find optimum scenarios that fits certain contexts would take place. So this in itself looks into the idea of walkability between different spaces and how much heat is being imposed on each and every person. And if they are able to convey that through an application, basically, so report that I'm feeling hot, I'm not able to walk through this route anymore, it's bothering me very much, how much would this small piece of information log into the bigger picture? I wouldn't go into that, and I would say that it's about integrating again the research into the design when we deal with actual environments or buildings. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nia, for this insightful session, and we really appreciate each and every part of it. Our sincere apologies for the inconvenience, and we appreciate the fact that you were able to steam it up. And I will just ask, we have some questions which participants have already shared on the comment section. There's a question from Shalom. She asks, what's the timeline in energy efficiency and environmental design? And there is another question from Suleiman. He asked, is life cycle assessment, LCAs, the same as environmental impact assessment?
Apologies, I didn't get the question. Could you repeat that again?
The first question is from Shalom. She asks that what's the timeline in energy efficiency and environmental design? And there's another question from Suleiman. He asks that is life cycle assessment, LCA, the same as environmental impact assessments?
Okay. So first question is the timeline for energy efficiency in building, right?
Yes, I believe she's asking about the relation with energy efficiency between energy efficiency and environmental design.
Yes.
About slide,
okay.
that slide 3.
The relation between energy efficiency and environmental design. Well, environmental design is about energy efficiency. I think it's one of the core reasons for this particular track or move for the need of environmental design, because with the problem of the climatic conditions, I don't know where is she located, but if you are located in a city that has hot, arid conditions, for example, so you have the summer season, which is a heat rise, and then you have a cooler winter month. So I would say that based on which month, so do you design your building or your space where you include mechanical cooling to suit which time of the year? So we usually make it based on, the norm that we know that what happens in this particular city. So we're used to the idea of having houses that are equipped with electrical fans, for example, for ventilation. But then what happened with these alerts that are causing a lot of excess heat rise is that these particular installations are not enough. So what's happening is that we are going into other solutions which are not energy efficient. So when we say energy efficient, it means that they do provide optimum solutions for the user's comfort. So you want to be feeling cool during the summertime and feeling warm or acceptable during the winter time, but you want to be as efficient as possible. So you want to know that, okay, so this is the right time, let's say, for this particular room, if it's being located in the south orientation, if you provide curtains, outer curtains, for example, fabrics for your terraces, this would reduce the heat that's going into the space. And basically, you might not even want to use or require any mechanical cooling. So that when we look into it, this is what we basically call as energy efficient. So we want to know what are the times where we can design these spaces to be efficient, to provide comfort without using energy. So it's always a balance, based on the space, on the climate, where are you located, what are you doing inside the space? Is it a residential space or is it an office building, and so on. The second question is?
Okay, briefly, I would just appreciate you attend to the second question, which is on, he asks that is life cycle assessment the same as environmental impact assessment?
No, it's not the same. The life cycle assessment is different. Well, the core content of both or understanding both could be very similar. But I would say that the environmental impact assessment is usually conducted for a certain item. So you want to know the environmental impact assessment for this particular building in operation, for example. When you look into the life cycle assessment of it, on another hand, you look into, okay, the early stage from the design, the construction phase, and then the end of construction, and then the demolishing and what happens to the building later on with each and every part inside the building. So you look into the whole life of the building. The environmental impact assessment, it's basically an assessment service that you're trying to, identify what's the impact of this particular thing at a certain stage, rather than look at the whole life cycle of it on a very general note.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, Dr. Nia, for this wonderful session with you this morning. And we believe it's been a great learning moment. And we really appreciate you. On behalf of the Leadership Council of SGSN Nigeria, we sincerely appreciate the time and your commitment facilitating today's masterclass session. And we hope to have further engagements with you, and we wish you a productive time over there. Thank you so much. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, dear actors, it's been a wonderful session on sustainable constructions. Right about now, we are moving to the next module for today, which we're also blessed to have another industry leader in our midst, in person of engineering, who is going to be leading the module on the topic on renewable energy and energy management. Engineer Hoye, he is currently the head of mini grids at NG Energy Access Nigeria, and she is responsible for building a high-performance team that will electrify rural communities, stimulate demand, and build a profitable business. She is knowledgeable in rural renewable energy system, energy management, power utility management, energy market tariff modeling, power system planning. He is a versatile professional with 8 years of experience in energy system and management. She is a registered engineer in Nigeria and also a member of Nigerian Society of Engineers and the Association of Energy Engineers USA. This morning, we are glad to welcome you, Engineer, to the masterclass session of the Climate Actors Accelerator Programme. Thank you for honoring our invitation always. We do not take this for granted. Good morning, Ma.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you for dragging me. A very strong question. It's not everybody that can drag me, but it's okay.
I do not take it for granted. I'm really appreciative.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Especially for me, I always do my best to make sure that I respond to this kind of requests that come from, well, I still consider myself young in the sector, but for lack of a better word, opportunities to interact with younger ones, especially, just fresh out of school and trying to navigate their careers. And the reason I do that, despite my calendar is really busy, despite how busy it is that these were some of the things that I wish that I had, at the times where I was at certain stages in my career. And so, as always, it's a pleasure to be here. I also don't take it for granted. Thank you for inviting me. And I hope that we can learn together. I always consider these sessions to a time of learning for myself. And at least, if not for nothing else, also a time of solidifying the things that I knew, because you find that it's in the questions that you figure out where the knowledge gaps are. And so, as always, I would always start by saying, please let me know what your expectations are of today. If you can type in the comment section, I'll just give a couple of minutes. What would you want to learn? Is there any particular question you have? So that as I go through, my slides are not a lot, so I would speak more rather than present. So that as we go through, I would specifically answer the questions that you may have. So just put a comment in the chat. You can drop your name and then, just tell me what your expectations are, and if there are specific questions you want to know, so I can speak to that as I speak. So I give a couple of minutes. Let's see.
Okay, dear participants, would like to use the comment section on YouTube to drop your expectations, and the program manager will be able to share. You can drop your name, your state, and what exactly your expectations are, and we'll share with our facilitator for today.
Okay, I'll just share my screen. So I'm assuming that means that everybody here is quite knowledgeable.
Comments coming in. Why you also share your screen, man?
I don't know which one is sharing. Please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen, and we just appreciate to have it in a full presentation mode.
Okay, let me do this again. I will. Okay, you can see it's full now, right?
Yes, perfect, perfect.
Has anything come on the chat? Understand
Yes.
renewable energy and how it's going to be managed in the future. Okay, so just keep dropping it. I'll just keep looking at it. My expectations is to leverage knowledge of this platform now to harness renewable energy alternatives available. Okay. So I typically will always give this disclaimer. The thoughts that are shared here are fully mine. They don't represent my employer, past, present, or future. And as you can imagine, I'm not an island. The information I also shared are things that I've gotten from other authors and industry experts. A lot of them have been acknowledged in the slides, but if there is any, so it may contain copyrighted materials which has not been fully authorized, but a lot that are here have been acknowledged, at least on the slide deck itself. So I'll just move into it. Just a brief overview, first of all, to try and get us to understand what energy is, and then before we go into renewable energy, right? So energy is just capacity to do work, like capacity to raise this cup of tea that I have here, capacity to push a car, that's energy. Just the fact that you have the capacity, or a system or a machine, has the capacity to be able to do work. And for those of us that did a bit of physics in secondary school, you would know that it is work is said to be done, when the point of direction of force moves through a distance in the direction of the application of the force, right? So that is what it is. So for anybody or for any material, many of the materials innate in them is the capacity, what we typically refer to as energy content, to do work. So for example, the gas in our houses, right? So the CNG that we may use to cook, did I say CNG? Sorry, the gas the cooking gas that we use, or even the kerosene that we use, inside that material, inside that gas, is the capacity to do work. You are able to convert that chemical energy to heat energy, right? And then that heat energy is able to boil a cup of water, cook food, and all of that, right? That's in the basest form. That's how we can define energy, in the context that we can all understand it, and with things that we can relate to, right? So, like I've explained, energy exists in different forms. So I've given some examples. There's heat energy, there's electrical energy, solar energy, nuclear energy, mechanical energy. Just the fact that you can walk, if you want to define it, is defined as mechanical energy. The fact that you can make motion and have locomotion. Solar energy is the energy we receive from the sun, right? So if we're able to harvest that in forms of solar PVs and all of that, that's energy from the sun. Also remember that if you remember your photosynthesis that we did in secondary school, plants are also able to harness some of that energy from the sun, and that's what is used to make food for plants. Electrical energy, as we all be used to in our houses, is the energy that we use to charge our phones, turn on our televisions, run home appliances, and of course even industrial appliances. Heat energy is one of the most significant forms of energy that you can easily transform from one place to another. And then we go to the basic energy conservation rule, which is that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but can be transformed from one form to another. We're blessed that God has just provided this energy in nature, right? So we have it in nature, it's been created. What we do is to harness that is already available and convert them to applicable forms, to put them in forms that we can easily use it. Today, you find that electrical energy is the base or is mostly used because it can be easily converted. So once you present something in electrical energy, you can, if you're blending, you can convert it to mechanical energy by the movement of the motors inside your blender, and then by that motion, you're able to blend whatever you want to eat. Electrical energy, you put it, it can power television that allows you to have display. You power your speakers, you are able to listen to music, and all of that, right? So you find that we're able to convert it from one form to another, right? So then going down into how we categorize energy resources. Today is broadly categorized into renewable energy resources and non-renewable energy resources. As the name implies, non-renewable energy resources, and some people call it conventional energy resources, are the resources that do not easily replenish itself, right? Does not easily replenish itself. I want us to be able to clearly distinguish between energy that pollutes, right? And what in the actual definition renewable energy resources are. Renewable energy resources are, like I've already said, energy is already abundant in creation, right? So renewable energy resources are resources that easily replicate themselves, or it's such a large source that you cannot deplete its availability, right? For those of us that have followed the energy industry, you will hear things that, oh, this oil well has dried up, that has dried up. Even though from research, if you allow that failed, maybe in another 1,000 years to replenish itself, but it's not doing it as fast as we are consuming it, as opposed to the sun, the energy from the sun that is easily available, and no matter how much we utilize, we are not anywhere near depleting it. We have not done 1% of the energy utilization of the sun, right? So non-renewable energy resources are then those resources that do not easily replicate themselves. One major characteristic of it is that it has a lot of carbon content, which is then what pollutes the environment. So in terms of renewable energy resources, this is the major that we have. So I'll try and go through each of them one by one, and also provide a bit more context around how power is generated from these resources, right? So I'll start with hydro energy, right? So water in itself, either by its mass, so either that you have a lot of water, right, or by its motion, and that motion, we don't cause it. So the water that's flowing by a stream is just as a result of, for those of us that did physics, is a result of the movement of the water, but the movement of the galaxy, right? The movement especially of the sun and the moon, and how they interact with each other. That's what produces wind that makes the rivers flow, right? So water in itself, if there's motion in it, there's energy in it, right? There's kinetic energy in it, it's moving. Water in itself, if it's by itself, even if it's not flowing, just by itself, because of the weight that it has, it contains potential energy, right? Which means that you can make it flow in the kind of direction that you want to be able to harness the energy that is inside. So hydro energy, I've tried to explain it, and the way we harness it in both forms, the way I've explained it, right? So if a lot of people on these calls are in Nigeria and understand, the power sector, we know that today, 30%, give or take, about 30% of the power that's generated in Nigeria comes from our hydro sources, the Kainji dams, can't remember the other two, but we have three major, you should be able to remember. I don't know why Zungeru is on my mind. Zungeru is a new power plant that will soon come online, but we have Kainji, Shiroro, and one other one. I can't remember the name of the third one. It generates about 30% of the power that we use on the national grid, right? And the way that happens is that water is dammed. That's why you have a dam. It's like you hold the water, right? You're not allowing the water to flow. So water is flowing, and you put a dam. You put like an obstruction to say, calm down, just stay here, right? And then that water, of course, because it's flowing, it keeps building up on the dam, and you have a very long dam in it. And then you find a way to just create a little opening. Remember that water is flowing with a lot of force, but you've stopped it, right? You find a way to create a little opening around, and then channel the water to flow through a turbine, right? It flows through a turbine, and then it turns that turbine and is able to generate electricity. So let me take a step back and try and explain it in simple terms. So imagine, exactly, a lot of us live in places that you have an overhead tank, right? A lot of us live in places that you have an overhead tank. And we know, can I still see my screen? Yes, okay. My system went off a bit. And we know that, we understand the pressure of the overhead tank. In many instances, if you build a very high tower and you put the tank there, the water will flow down without any motor. You don't have to go and pump water, quote unquote. The water comes down. You have to pump it up, but the water comes down by itself. It's something similar that you do in the power sector. And then because it's coming down with that pressure, it's able to provide the force that should turn the turbines. Now, let me also take a step back and explain to you the basic way electricity is generated, because it actually applies to every other thing here, I think except from solar system, but every other thing here applies to it. Electricity is generated by three simple things, right? You have a coil of wire and you have a magnet. This is by nature, right? This is part of the wonders of God's creation, right? The moment you have a coil of wire and you pass a magnet through it, right? Electricity is induced. Let me use the scientific term. Electricity is induced in the coil of wire. Essentially, electricity starts to flow, right? it's not something we mix in the lab. That's all it is. You can actually try it wherever you are, right? If you have a magnet and you have a wire, but it must be a coil, it can't be a straight wire. You coil the wire. If you pass that magnet through inside the wire, through the wire, the relative motion, that's the third thing I mentioned. The relative motion between a coil of wire and a magnet generates electricity. This is electricity in that wire. If you connect a bulb, if you try this thing at home, if you connect a bulb to the two ends of the wire and you pass a magnet through it, electricity will be generated. Now, the biggest problem is how do you make this system perpetual, right? How do you keep ensuring that there is constant motion? Because you can have a wire and then you can have your magnet, right? So if you go to big power plants, you will see big magnetic coils, big coils of wire, right? Once you have both, right? The major thing you then need is motion, right? And motion is what? Mechanical energy, like I explained. You need something that will keep driving, and either way works. Is either you keep moving the coil of wire or you keep moving the magnet. Either way generates electricity. You just need relative motion. You need motion between both. So you need a source of energy or a source of energy, a source of mechanical energy actually, that is able to keep moving, keep motion perpetual for all the days of the week, all the years, and all of that, right? And so for hydropower plants, so let me go back to the hydropower plants, that dam that you have, because you've created pressure, and then you open you have a small opening, the water comes out with so much force, right? And the way it is designed is that it keeps, so you then have a turbine, right? You have like a fan blade. You can try it in your house. If you just go and blow your fan, just even with the air from your mouth, the blades will turn. So you can imagine that water, of course, is properly designed. The blades of the turbine are properly designed. Water keeps just hitting that turbine blades with the kind of pressure that can turn it. And then that turbine blades just keep turning. It just keeps turning and turning and turning and generating that motion. Of course, the other configurations of how the magnet and the wire interacts are done, somewhere inside the powerhouse. And then it just keeps turning, and electricity is generated. And of course, we then have the transmission lines and the distribution lines that then bring that electricity down to you. So that's the basic way electricity is generated. And in all the forms of, like I said, except a portion of solar energy, that's the same thing that happens. So that's what happens with hydro energy, right? Between the energy is the same thing. There is a coil of wire and magnets inside the wind turbine. So you put the turbine in a place that wind blows it. Like I said, remember the first one I explained, you just make water to turn the turbine. For wind, it's the same thing. You just put it in a place, of course, you put the direction properly, you know where the wind comes from. You put it in a place that allows the wind to turn the turbine, to turn the blades. The same way water was turning the blades in a hydro plant, the wind would turn the blades, right? And then the configuration of the magnet and the coil of wire is somewhere behind. And then you connect whatever in transmission and your distribution systems, or you connect it directly to your load, and then power is generated, right? So that's the basic way. Same thing with geothermal energy, right? Geothermal energy is energy that is heat that is stored underground. Again, for those of us that have done a bit of science, you understand that the Earth's core, inside the Earth, there's a lot of heat. That's why if you follow the news, you hear some of all these volcanic eruptions. There's a lot of heat inside the Earth's core, again, kept in there by God, right? So that heat, in some places, for example, in Kenya, you have it come up to the surface. It comes up to the surface in such a way that you can actually tap it, right? It comes up to the surface either as boiling water. You have very hot water that comes, right? It comes up to the surface, and we can go in, maybe 1-2 kilometers, 10 kilometers down, and be able to bring out that heat, right? So we have that heat, and then when we have the technology that taps that heat and brings it to the surface, you use the heat. So in some instances, you may have to augment the heat. In some instances, it's hot enough. You use that hot water, right, to again turn the turbines. Essentially, you find hot water, and then if you're boiling water, even if you're boiling rice, you know that in many instances, the steam from that rice or water you're boiling can heat up, the cover of the pot, right? We see it. That same technology, that's what happens. That heat, you channel it again to turbines, and then they turn the turbines. And because they turn the turbines, we have again that motion that we need. We have that perpetual motion because you want it to be on its own. You want the motion to be going by itself. That motion brings, turns the turbines and is able to again generate electricity. You connect it either to your transmission or distribution networks and to your load. Same thing with tidal energy. You put blades, or there are many designs of the blades, but that's essentially how it happens. You put those blades underwater. What's the word now? The pressure of the water turning, moving, right? That energy that it carries to move the water is able to turn the blades and to keep turning them. So of course you have to find a place inside the ocean that you're sure water will always move. It turns the blades and it keeps turning it. Somewhere inside that configuration, there is magnet and there is a coil of wire, right? And power is generated and you bring it out. Same thing with bioenergy. Bioenergy is energy that is available in our plants and in our waste, right? What actually happens with bioenergy? Bioenergy is, in terms of configuration, is actually almost the same in terms of configuration with what you would call conventional and fossil fuel power plants, right? So I'll take a step back and explain the fossil fuel power plants. What happens with fossil fuel power plants is you have a power system, right? That provides chemical energy from all the possible fossil fuel feedstock, like coal, gas, crude oil, heavy oil, and all of that. What you do with that is that you burn it, like the way you burn your gas in your house as though you're cooking. You actually bring massive drums of water, and then you use that feedstock, whatever it is, coal, gas, heavy oil, and you boil water, right? That's where you hear steam power plants. You boil water with the energy content of those materials. You boil water with it, like I explained with geothermal. The water is superheated, let me use the technical term, is superheated and pressurized, right? At those very high heats, in some instances as high as 600 degrees Celsius. And of course, because it carries a lot of energy, for those of us, if you're boiling water and you're going to put your hand over the nozzle of your kettle, you're going to get injured, even though water may not touch you, but just the steam that's coming out of it will most likely injure you, right? So that steam, again, is able to turn a turbine and keep turning the turbine. So you keep boiling the water. So if you go to like an Eglin power plant, that's what happens perpetually, right? Yeah, they bring, whatever feedstock that they're using, whether it's heavy oil or gas, and there's water there, and water is boiled perpetually. It's boiled, and then that steam is directed, there are nozzles and all of that. It's not as simple as I'm saying it, but that's the basic principle. And then it keeps turning the turbine, right? And then it turns the turbine and power is generated. So with bioenergy, so back to bioenergy, what happens is that instead of using either gas or crude oil or coal or any of the fossil fuel systems, you then use energy that is either harvested from waste. So you you pick waste and then you burn it, same thing. You just burn it, you set it on fire, same thing. And then it boils water and then it turns the turbine. Or, you gasify we know that when we decompose waste material, for those of us that have been around, that is, in so many instances, you heard the smell. You take a lot of waste, you decompose it. That the gas of decomposition, the gas that comes out of that decomposition process, can also be used same thing, to boil water, it turns the turbine. Another way you can use bioenergy is so either you boil the solid material, you use the solid material, burn it, the heat it generates steams water for you, the steam of the water turns your turbine, or you decompose the waste, right? It's that you decompose the waste, and then the gas that comes out of it, which is what we call biogas, Again, you use it to boil water, and then it turns a turbine. All right. Same thing with all the other things you hear, rice husk and all of that. You take the rice husk, you heat it up, and then it turns a turbine. That's if you're talking about the very big turbines. The small turbines that we have, the small generators here and there is the same thing, right? It's the heat that comes out of it that moves the piston. So for all the small generators, it's a piston system. But the point is that you need mechanical energy that comes from chemical energy, which is the energy that's inherent in all the materials of nature. And then it's boiled, and then it turns. It provides the motion that helps you turn. That helps you have a magnet cutting, helps you have a coil of wire cutting through the field of a magnet. Essentially, that's how power is generated. And that's how power is generated across renewable energy sources, right? So the system of power generation in itself is almost the same across boards. What happens is, what's your feedstock, right? What's the source of that power? So then I'll move to solar energy specifically to then explain it. So solar energy is then a bit different, because what happens is that we're not having relative motion between a magnet and a coil of wire. What happens is that we're harvesting energy directly from the sun, right? Again, similar to what happens with photosynthesis. The rays of light is actually light. The photons that hit, it's actually light and not heat. That hits certain solar cells. Those solar cells are able to, by reason of the rays of light hitting the solar cells, it displaces some of the structure of that system, and then it causes electrons to flow, right? It's like everybody's standing on a straight line, and sun hits and just hits somebody, and that one hits the next person, and it just causes a chain reaction, and then electrons just move. Electricity is just electrons in motion, the electrons just move. So that's what solar energy is in plain terms. There's a cell structure, but you just have a ray of light hit one of them, or hit as many, of course, depending on how you do your structures, and then it just causes the electrons to move, which is exactly the same thing magnet does to a coil of wire, right? So for you to generate electricity, you just need to allow electrons to move. So that's how we generate energy from the sun from PV panels, right? You would also may have heard of concentrated CSP, was concentrated solar systems, right? What happens is that one harvests the heat of the sun. So what happens is you typically will have a lot of mirrors put together, right? Those mirrors are supposed, if I don't know if you tried this when you were in secondary school, but we did certain experiments that if you had a prison and you put it directly under the sun, if you put paper just under it, you had a mirror prison, a glass. If you just put paper under it, or even a microscope, that paper will catch fire, because that microscope helps concentrate the heat of the sun, right, into whatever is under it, right? So what happens is that paper under it, you see it to start burning, right? I mean, some of the experiments we did when we were in school, but that's the same thing, right? So what then happens is, for you to have big power plants like that, you have a lot of mirrors or a lot of glass, right? And then, of course, it's designed in such a way that it's able to concentrate the heat of the sun. It concentrates the heat of the sun. Same process. That heat boils water turns a turbine, or boils a liquid. In some instances, what I'm explaining is not water that is used. So in some places, it's a different liquid, right? But heats up a liquid, and then that liquid turns a turbine and then generates power. Because for gas power plants, that's actually what happens. So with what we call gas power plants, right? Gas power plants actually don't use water. What happens is you heat the gas, and the steam of the gas itself is used to turn the turbine. You don't use it to boil water. But yeah, essentially you need heat to heat a liquid, and then the liquid creates motion, and then that motion turns the turbine, and power is generated. So that's how power is generated from all the energy sources, like all the renewable energy sources that you know. And then I mean, that power is then converted to power. And I was trying to explain earlier that power, it's electricity. electricity is that form of energy that is easily interconvertible. So what happens is that for all the energy sources, what you try and do is to convert it to electricity, right? Electricity is like the national carrier, right? And then that electricity, when it gets to whatever point of utilization, it can also again be converted back to whatever type of energy you need it for. So the heater in my house, what I actually need is heat, right? But then it's either I boil water with my gas, right? Or my kerosene stove, or I have an electric heater that is able to give me hot water. But remember, what I needed was heat, right? But because electricity can easily be interconverted, that's why it's like you find a way to take all these sources of energy, put it into electricity, convert it into electricity. Then at the point of utilization, you convert it again. I need my fan to be on, right? And all I do is I turn on my electricity. My electricity moves the motors inside the fan, and the fan rotates, and then I have ventilation. I need my air conditioner to be on. Electricity comes in. It's able to compress air, and then I have cooling inside the house, right? So essentially, that's the basic understanding of renewable energy and what they do and how it is utilized, in the sector, right? Can we integrate renewable energies? Before I move to a different topic, let me just look at some of the questions that are here before we, which opportunities? I'd like to know the difference between green energy, renewable energy, and clean energy. So that's what I'd explained. Let me start from the beginning. So that's why I had explained. What renewable energy was. Renewable energy, by definition, is just energy that is easily replenished, right? It's also just that one major characteristic. So tomorrow, scientists can find a renewable energy resource that is not actually clean, even though today it doesn't happen. We haven't had any instance of it, right? But because all renewable energy sources that we have today are clean energy. So clean energy is what we define as energy that does not pollute. Essentially, it does not have carbon content in it. That when you use the energy, does not produce carbon into the atmosphere. So with all fossil fuel that right, all of them are hydrocarbons. If we go back to our basic chemistry, all of them are hydrocarbons, which means that when you burn them, if you remember, it produces water, produces H2O, and another form of hydrocarbon with CO2 at the end, right? So it's either you take a C6H6, by the time it goes through the process, because for you to burn it, you need oxygen. So by the time you add your oxygen to it, water is produced, CO2 is produced, and then maybe another form of a CH is produced. Sorry, I'm going into the chemistry, right? But so what clean energy is then energy that when you convert and when you use does not produce essentially CO2 and other polluting gases like sulfuric acids and all of that pollute the atmosphere, right? So that's the difference. It's just that today all the renewable energy sources we know of are clean. In fact, in many instances, and I don't want to get into that argument, there's also the question is what's it now? What's uranium? What do they call it? Nuclear energy. Is it renewable or not? Right? But let's not go into that. Future energy opportunities, I'll answer that. Having non-renewable energy and advocated for non-renewable resources, which of the renewable energy sources, solar, biomass, wind, is the most climate friendly among all of them? So, as I have explained, you can see, so in terms of climate, speaking specifically around climate and the, and because climate is quite broad, if you then want to speak specifically around global warming, right, which is the fact that the earth is heating up, right? I've already explained, when you get power from solar, there is no emission of CO2s, right? So nothing goes up there. the COs and CO2s, the carbon monoxide and the carbon dioxides, right? So we don't have that. It's when CO gets into the atmosphere that it recombines again with oxygen, and then it has O3. And then the ozone layer, and then we are producing more for the ozone layer, and then heat is trapped into the earth. So solar energy, like I've just explained, you don't have any of those emissions. Wind, like I've just explained, you don't have any of those emissions. Hydro, like I just explained, you don't have any of those emissions. Biomass, not so, because if you're burning something, once you're burning something, you're emitting a derivative of carbon. So it's either you're doing CO or CO2, depending on how clean your burning is, right? Because you're burning something, because you're generating heat, right? So not so much, but the thing is that the carbon content in it is not as high as what you will find in other fossil fuel plants, right? So I'll move forward now to speak about grid integration of renewables into and speaking specifically around Nigeria. So the question is, can we put wind turbines? Can we put hydro? Can we put solar systems on the grid? Can we even put EVs on the grid? The simple answer is yes. But the thing is, in my opinion, do we think the Nigerian grid has gotten there where we're able to integrate solar systems, renewable systems, whether it be solar or wind? Have we developed such resilience that we're able to integrate those systems into the grid? I think we still have some ways to go. It is possible. Technically, it's possible. I mean, it's been done in other places. But we just need to make sure that, first of all, our grid is redundant, is resilient, and is robust enough to be able to carry the integration of renewable energy systems into the grid, right? It would take a lot of research, a lot of planning, but can we have embedded systems? So instead of putting it in the national grid, right? Can we go to a location, Abuja, so can we come to Wuse in Abuja and say, oh, Wuse will be powered by renewable energy resources? Yes. And the reason I tell you yes is that in many mini grids, that's what we already do. So that has been proven in Nigeria, right? Yes, the load in the mini grid will not be as big as the load that you have in a proper urban area. But I mean, we can always take one small system and scale it. So can we do that? Come to just a location. And I mean, it's been done. You're seeing a lot of industrial offices converting their energy sources, right, to renewables. I think, if I remember very well, NBC is in the news, Sterling Bank is in the news, for being able to use renewable energy solar systems specifically to power some of their operations. So is it possible today? What can we do today? Is it possible to have renewable and embedded energy generation? Very possible, proven in the market, the skills available in the market to do it. Do we have policies that support it? Not so much. We don't have policies that make it commercially viable, or rather our policies need to be defined a bit more, because a lot of our policies, of course, have been around the grid. We need to be played around a bit more to get us there. So I mean, this is just to show electricity supply and where you can use these renewable energy systems. You can see that solar PV systems, you can use them as domestic standalone. They can power productive use appliances. They can even power and I've given examples of that. They can power mini grids and even small IPPs. I mean, the research today goes to less than 10 megawatts. Once you begin to go above that, I'm not sure that there's enough research to show that it is possible or it has been tested, right? Recently, our president commissioned a 2 megawatt solar plant in Kano. So even in Nigeria, we're seeing the 2 megawatts, right? Small hydro systems. So what I've just explained with hydro, you can actually have just a small turbine that is a river somewhere, in somebody's village, able to put a dam there to generate power. Yeah, you essentially don't use them for the very small standalone. It's possible, like engineering wise, it's possible. I can build a small hydro in my house, but it doesn't make commercial sense because of the kind of engineering that has to go into it to just build it for one person, right? But of course, when you begin to talk about the CNIs, the mini grids, small IPPs, it's very possible. Similar with wind, you can have one small wind turbine. It does not exactly support a domestic standalone, but supports productive use appliances and all the way down. Similar with biogas, we're seeing it today. There is news. I haven't been to the plant, but there is news that in Dangote sugar plant, he's using his bagasse. So he's using the back of the sugarcane. It's called bagasse to be able to generate power that he uses in those plants. I've seen it somewhere in the news. And I know, like in a country like where's that? In a country like Swaziland, that's actually one of their main power generating systems, right? Eswatini, like they call themselves, Kingdom of Eswatini. They have one of their major exports is sugarcane. They export sugar a lot, so they have a lot of sugarcane plantations, and they use it to generate power. It's available on the internet, and so you can use biogas, solar thermal, like I explained it from solar PV and solar thermal. Solar thermal is when you take the heat in the sun, not when you take the light rays. It can be used today for domestic use. In some places, like I've seen this in South Africa, and maybe you may see, if you should enter Nigeria, you have people that just have solar water heaters on their roof. So instead of having heaters in their houses, they use the heat of the sun to heat the water that they use for processes. Same thing, you can use it for productive use. And this is speaking to cooling. We can still use solar systems. This requires some level of technical engineering, and maybe I shouldn't go into it, but I mean can be used all the way across once you move from domestic use. So I'll take a pause here, and in the next 10 minutes try and see if we can finish energy management. This is where we come to the end of renewable energy systems. I think I've answered this question. My expectations are the types of renewable energy available in Nigeria, how to implement them in local areas of the country. So, and maybe I can send this slide. You can see the parts that can be used in smaller miniature areas. Practical experience of making renewable energy. I know that they're sponsoring. I know that there's funding available for people that want to start assembling and maybe manufacturing solar PVs in Nigeria. As you can imagine, a lot of these things are not manufactured in Nigeria, but in terms of utilization, I think I've explained, how it can be used in Nigeria. Understand how renewable energy is going to be managed in the future, how it's going to be managed in the future. So I'll go back to the slide. So I've spoken about, standalone systems. When we go back to the slide now, you can see, generally, it is expected that even today on the grid, there's something we call base load and peak load. Base load is your base load. So I use your house as an example. In many houses, except you're really, really trying to conserve energy, you don't turn off your fridge. The fridge is always on, right? So your fridge is what is referred to as base load. That load, that once power is available, is always on. It's on at least 95% of the time. It's your base load. Now, what happens is that because of reliability, right, you want to be able to have an energy resource that can supply that base load. Remember that we don't control the sun, we don't control the wind, right? It was raining this morning. If say we wanted to build a country where we use the sun as our base load, or we use energy from the sun as a base load, we don't have ultimate control over it, right? So it means that we may not be able to assure our base load, right? And so in many instances, it is still being, at least what is obtainable today, is that you still use non-renewable energy resources for your base load because you control the feedstock. Like I can plan for gas to be available for the next 1 year or for the next 10 years. I mean, we see what's happening in Europe because of shortage of gas and what's happening with Russia and all of that. They had a PPA, they had an agreement with Russia to say, oh, you must supply us this quantity of gas. I mean, if not for instances like what's going on, you can actually sit down, have a contract with gas, go to a gas field, understand the available of gas that is available when it will be depleted, and say, okay, I'm going to use this gas for the next 5 years because you can plan for it. Build a pipeline that brings you the gas and you can plan for it. And that's what you normally use for your base load because you know that loads must be on. What is being proposed today is that you then use renewable energy resources for what we call your peak load and your variable load. So If I'm not in the house, my fridge will always be on. But once I come in, I'm going to turn on one bulb, two bulb, second bulb, maybe my television, my AC, and all of that. That's the variable load. That's the load that is not always on. So you want to be able to integrate your renewable energy systems to be able to come in at those times for variable load, the load that goes off and on. So that's how it's going to be managed. Are we going to be beginning to see, of course, more and more of EVs? We will see it in the future. We will see integration of solar systems into the grid. Countries like I mentioned, Kenya, that has geothermal. I mean, Kenya, I think let me not call it percentage, but a significant percentage of the power that's generated in Kenya comes from geothermal systems, right? Because they have it, right? For us in Nigeria, at least it hasn't been discovered. If we have it, we haven't discovered it, right? So countries are going to keep exploring the resources that they have to be able to meet whatever demand that they have. Can we integrate renewables in energy? Can we? If you ask me as an engineer, yes, we can. We can integrate renewables. There's enough study to show that it's possible. Are we there yet? So, for example, to integrate renewables into the grid, first of all, you need to have SCADA, across, or maybe, you need to have control, supervisory control, right? Do we have SCADA today on the grid? That's the question you should ask. Is it possible technically? Yes, it's possible. Are we there yet? Do we have, the condition precedents, the things that must be available today to then integrate renewable into the grid tomorrow? No, we don't have it yet. Can we get there? Yes, absolutely, yes. Very possible and also very controllable. Like I said, it's not rocket science. It's been done across the world. So I move quickly into energy management. My time is almost up. So energy management is just the planning operation of energy production, energy consumption, right? You can take it from your basic level, like in my house today. How do I manage my energy? In many instances today, many people have NEPA, have power from the grid, have probably a generator, and probably have an inverter. So the question is, you take it from the smallest level to the largest level. Again, like the question you just asked about integrating renewables to the grid, it will now be national energy management, right? So I'll just explain it in the simple terms, right? So energy management is just planning, the operations of energy production and consumption. So in many instances in our houses, our production is either comes from the grid, or our supply is from the grid, most likely with a battery somewhere and a generator somewhere, gas or diesel. So you need to plan, when do I want power? Today, we don't know when we're going to get grid power. Currently in my house, I'm running on my inverter because there's no grid power, right? So you want to plan that, either country-wise or even maybe you're the energy manager of a factory, for example, right? But I'll take it down to the basis level, which is, in a household, right? So you want to plan, okay, let's assume you know what band you are on the grid, right? Let's just assume that you know that you're going to get 16 hours of supply. The question is, how do you get the other 8 every day? Are you going to run your generator for 4 hours and then use your inverter for another 4 hours? Or are you going to say, okay, I just need power during the day, I just need power to work. If I go to bed, I'm not an AC person, I don't need cooling, I just open my windows, so it's fine. So all you need to plan for is 18 hours of a day when you're awake. Okay, how do you supply that power for 18 hours every day, right? But of course, the objective is you want to make sure your resource is adequately utilized, you're saving your cost, right? And then that you have power when you need it. I know that energy management in Nigeria is not exactly optimized, not exactly where it should be, but that's what you want to do. And of course, you want to throw in the climate part. You also want to make sure that climate-wise, you're not destroying the economy. So that's essentially what energy management is. The way I've explained it, you can cascade it anywhere. You can cascade it to the national grid, you can cascade it to a company, and you're able to design a system that is able to manage the energy of a place. Now, energy efficiency is then the ability to use less energy to perform the same tasks, right? You want to use less energy to produce the same resource. So today, if you were, say, for example, again in my house, assuming that at the end of the day, I do 20,000 naira worth of energy. Let's just say the grid, right? The question is, can I use that? Can I either use less energy to achieve everything that I used to achieve in my house? So can I plan myself in such a way that I use less energy, and maybe that less energy will cost 15,000. And I'm still able to do everything. Like I didn't stop doing what I used to do, right? So it's either I remove the waste. So if that maybe before I used to forget to turn off my AC when I go to work, then it means I remember we just need behavioral change. So I remember to turn off my AC before going to work. Or if I find out that, oh, my AC is not energy efficient, I still run it for the same hour. So I still run it for 8 hours, but I can change the AC, right? So such that instead of the AC consuming 1 unit of energy per hour, it's consuming 0.5. But I'm still getting the same cooling that I should have gotten, right? So you want to be able to understand your system well enough to see where is the waste. So energy efficiency is just about managing waste, right? Where is the waste in this? Can I produce same? So for example, we're beginning to have energy efficient freezers. So freezers that will give you the same amount of cooling that you require, but will consume less energy. So the food in your fridge is not spoiling. You're still maintaining your lifestyle, but you're consuming less energy. So that's what energy efficiency is essentially about. I have one more slide to go, and then I'll take any questions. Is it necessary? But we find that you find that today most of the energy that we utilize is wasted. We're beginning to more and more try. Systems are beginning to be designed. I'll give you an example. The old conventional power plants, if the energy content of, I don't know, let's say coal, that they burn, all that process I explained to boil water and all of that, the energy content, do have another corner. If the energy content of the coal, right, was supposed to produce 100 kilowatts of energy. That's if you took that coal and maybe did a magic or converted it to energy, it would have been 100 kilowatts. What you find today is that if we go through that process, right, you're going to have only 40 kilowatts. So our conventional power plants are about 40% efficient. The cycle itself is just about 40% efficient. So which means that when we burn gas or we burn coal or we burn whatever we burn to generate power, we actually only do 40% efficiency. So on one hand, engineers are trying to design more and more efficient systems to make sure that that conversion processes are more efficient. And on the other hand, also on the utilization, we need to start having utilization conversations that we don't waste the energy that we use. This is the end of my slide. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I was able to answer your questions. I think I'll stay on for another 5 minutes. I do have another call right now to see if there are any other questions that come through before I step out.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer. Thank you for the insightful session. We really appreciate each and every part of it. I believe you've attended to most of those questions that have been asked, and definitely I would just like to ask actors would like to connect with you and also learn further with you, from you rather. Which of this platform will you most prefer for them to reach out to you? Is it email or LinkedIn or?
Just send me a message on LinkedIn.
You said?
Send me a message on LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you. We are going to share our LinkedIn accounts with each and everyone for you to connect with on LinkedIn. Once again, on behalf of the leadership of SGSN, we really want to appreciate the time you spent with us today and the deep knowledge which you've also shared with us. We are really grateful, and thank you for always being part of each and every of our activity. We sincerely appreciate it so much. Thank you. I wish you a productive weekend ahead. Thank you so much, ma. See you next time.
All right, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
All right, thank you. Dear actors, I believe it's been a wonderful session today. Right about now, I would just like to share one or two information in line to the next phase of the program. The very first one, earlier I mentioned that by now I believe that all states reps, expectation is all states should have a representative. Currently we have Adamawa, Benue, Cross River, Imo, Sokoto, and Taraba states without a representative. Please, if you are in that team, you don't have a state representative by now, you're around. Even if you are two, if you are just two, and if you are just one in that team, make yourself the representative. It's very, very important. It determines your progress in the program. So before the end of today, you must see to that. It's very, very important. And like I mentioned, the information session for state representatives is tomorrow evening. So it's very important for you to reach out to the communication manager and introduce yourself. And secondly, please, should you have any question or anything you want me to address and give information about, you can use the comment section to address that. I would also like to speak about the timeline of phase 2, and we also have our updates as regards the timeline that's about climate education. Definitely, we know that there are some schools that might not have resumed by then, and there are some schools that will have resumed. So hopefully, when we have a clear-cut calendar, we are going to give you more detailed information. But there is always a room for us to adjust to whatever the nationwide calendar is, and yeah, there's always a room for that. And if there is any other information or if there is any other area of concern, I don't know if do we have anything of such? So if there are other area of concern, please, you can use the WhatsApp platform to share your question. And like I mentioned, though, we are going to emphasize that more to the state representatives. The community-based development projects, the climate education, the climate webinar, these are state projects. You are not meant to do any of it individually. You are not, including this climate education, you are not meant to do any of them individually. The only thing you can do is to have groups. So take, for example, in Sokoto State, you can have like 4 subgroups whereby you have people from different local governments coming together just because of distance. And most importantly, you also have to consider, distance is one of the major things you have to consider for your community projects. And we understand the prayer in the nationwide and also the security issues. So it has to be very close to your locale, either where you live or where you work. It's very important as regards that. And for you to submit your proposal, you need to work on your proposal. You need to submit your proposal for the 3 projects which we've highlighted earlier. And once you submit the proposal, an approval, we are going to share the approval if you can continue with that project. And definitely the project steering committee are going to be working on that. And you are going to submit your proposal through a particular submission link, which is going to be shared with the state reps and also going to be shared on the court group. And please don't forget, next weekend is the assessment and knowledge evaluation. We are going to be having the assessment and knowledge evaluation. This time around, it's just a 30-minute assessment and knowledge evaluation for you to know if at all you've learned a lot. Definitely you've been learning and relearning over and over, but it's very important and it also contributes to your grades. So please study well and revise whatever you've learned. Like I mentioned earlier today, the YouTube sessions are already, it's there forever. It's there forever for you to go back and watch over and over. If there are, we are going to revert back as regards those things on WhatsApp. And please, for those that have the state representatives, please kindly note that the information session is tomorrow evening. We are going to attend to that duly. And okay, there is a template. Yeah, there is a template for each and everything you want to do. There is a template which you are going to be using as the letter of introduction, the letter which you are submitting to community groups, maybe organizations or possible partners. And there's another letter of introduction which you are going to be giving to schools. Also, there is a letter of invitation which you are going to give to your key speaker. And we are going to dwell more on the structure of the climate webinar tomorrow to all the state reps. I think these are major information that I have to share now. If there are any other, we are going to share via the WhatsApp platform. Thank you everyone for joining the call today. I believe it's been a wonderful session. Please ensure you fill the attendance and evaluation form. This contributes to your grading. Ensure you fill that before you leave here. Wish you a productive day and productive weekend indeed. Enjoy the rest of your day.